Hi there, I'm Liz. I've met some of you, if not all of you, at various points in the past. I'd like to just welcome you to London and wish you well for the week that you're having. I hope the course is going well and also that your stay is good and the weather's not too cold. I've been asked to just do a short overview of the work of the fisheries section in ITF, and in particular the programme that I've been employed to lead on. So just a short background, I'm Liz Blackshaw and I'm employed to lead the ITF, International Transport Workers Federation, and the IUF, the International Union of Food Workers, both global federations who've made a joint decision to prioritise expanding union coverage in the fishing sector. Now, just to be clear, when I talk about the fishing sector, I'm not just talking about people who catch fish. I'm also talking about people who process fish, people who can fish, people who move fish around, both domestically and also internationally. So the campaign is looking at the whole supply chain. The campaign's only 2 years old and it's a programme as opposed to a campaign, simply because the industry has so many challenges, and also the level of unionisation within the industry is so small. Reports that we've been reading show that there are somewhere in the region of 120 million workers in the supply chain, yet unions only cover less than 1% of those workers. So the programme has a huge amount of work to do, and I'm privileged and challenged by the fact that I've been asked to do it. I've only got a short amount of time, so I'm going to try and give you an overview and a flavour of the type of work that we're engaged in. We have been doing a lot of research into 5 companies that were identified by the original steering committee in 2011 as companies that unions expressed an interest in developing better relations within and expanding their union coverage and their collective bargaining coverage as well. So we've been trying to work out not only how do we do that aspect of it, but also how do we use the systems that the fishing companies work within, and how do we identify leverage within that as well, to ensure that we, if needs be, can have very forceful campaigns. We started off with 5 companies and we're now at the phase of looking at 4 of those in more detail. Up until now, we've been prioritising a union in Papua New Guinea who agreed 18 months ago to host a pilot project out there. So we were looking at 1 country and 3 companies originally within that country who had huge fish processing operations, but also had fishing operations as well, and this is the model that the joint cooperation is based upon between ITF and IUF, which is looking at fish processing companies in their entirety. So we call them integrated companies, and they are companies that are totally reliant on both the sourcing and processing to export of fish. I'll go into a little bit more detail in Papua New Guinea in a second. Those of you who have already worked with us on the campaign will know that we've put time into working with the inspectorate team to see what their role might look like. We've done a huge amount of work with the comms team within ITF and built web pages and information resources. Rosen Karavachev, who I work with at ITF, has also built a fisheries toolkit which is looking at the ratification of Convention 188, which is the ILO convention, which is giving workers around the world access to universal standards of conditions of work and accommodation. Just a little tangent, those of you who have worked with fishers will know how difficult the industry is, and it's fair to say that if you look at any work reports on danger, health and safety, fatalities, mortality rates, fishing comes way up there on the list. But I would also urge you to have a look at the factory side of it, the processing, canning side of it, because again, workers in these factories face huge problems, huge problems, and they are really at the behest of the company who employs them, making sure that they have access to working and living conditions that we think would be acceptable anywhere in the world. And the research that we've been doing is that they don't. And like any country, anywhere in the world that has difficulties with governance, that has difficulties with industrial relations, that has economic challenges, you know, they are subject to the same difficulties that workers in any industry in those countries face. So it's a huge, I'm going to say challenge and responsibility, but also a huge privilege to be asked to do this. So going back to the original focus, we have now got a checklist for people who are going to be visiting vessels, whether it's in a fishing port or in a commercial port, whether it's an ITF inspector or somebody from a union who's just going to go on board and visit a vessel. So we've got some advice and information for them. Within the toolkit that Rossen has developed and is now on the ITF website, there are a range of resources, including a collective bargaining agreement, a model collective bargaining agreement, that can be discussed on board a vessel. We have, I think, probably a huge amount of support for the programme, way more than we had when I first started 2 years ago, because we've spent 2 years basically going around the world, going to meetings, conferences, hosting workshops, holding training events, and trying to not only engage unions but also ensure that they have access to opportunities to develop their work within the industry. So it's been a very challenging couple of years. But one of the things that I just want to briefly tell you about, and it is going to be brief because I haven't got long, we have been running a pilot project in Papua New Guinea in the South Pacific. And the Maritime Union out there have historically looked after dockers and seafarers, and they're the workers that they've unionised. But they took a decision a few years ago to look at the fishing industry. And in Papua New Guinea, fishing is not just a sea-based activity, it's also a land-based activity. And 30% of their economic growth over the next 10 years is due to come out of fishing. So the allocation of fishing licences has been to companies who have promised to make inward investment into the country, schools, hospitals, roads, good working conditions, training, development, etc. You know, it's been a huge privilege to work with the team out there and to help build the team and make it stronger and more able to deal with what they need to deal with. And so far, I won't go into the detail of what we've been doing, but we have now got to the point where the union have over 5,000 people who have committed to joining the union. We have 28 organised representatives who've been trained in collective bargaining negotiations and also understanding how to negotiate. We have 4 organisers who previously only had port-based experience, who now have a lot of land-based experience. We have 2 haulage companies that have been organised that were previously unorganised, who are responsible for transporting the fish from the port to the processing plants and back out again for export to Europe and North America predominantly. We have been working towards the government in terms of Convention 188 and supporting the union in their lobbying and efforts. A big challenge in the Pacific Islands and with Papua New Guinea is the fact that they're starting to move away from subsistence living and into a more commercially driven state of living. And so looking at things like the minimum wage and paying conditions more generally has been a challenge, and employers are very keen to ensure that they are not priced out of the market and can keep the workers in work and not have the work taken into a different country. So making sure that we're managing expectations and looking at how we ensure that work stays in Papua New Guinea has been a challenge. And the General Secretary of Papua New Guinea's Maritime Union actually sits on the minimum wages board, so that's something for them to consider to factor into the negotiations. So, you know, it's been a huge programme of activity, but a very successful programme of activity. But I'm going to kind of put it out there. This was one campaign in one country with a few unions and 8 companies. And we now have the challenge of taking that model out to the wider world. And this week, one of the reasons that we can't be there with you this week is the fact that we are running a week of meetings in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And at the end of the week, we've got 2 days where we're bringing together unions from Spain, from Norway, from Chile, Peru, Argentina and Brazil to look at how we expand this model out onto a multinational, multi-company basis. And it's going to be really interesting and really challenging. Obviously, at the time of recording this, I can't tell you what the outcome of that is, but I'm really hopeful that it's going to be a successful meeting. We've had pre-meetings in each of the countries with all of the unions involved, and they're all very, very keen to pursue this. And I think given the profile of the industry and given the challenges in the industry, it's very, very important that we capitalise on this particular programme at the moment. Food sustainability, and in particular fish sustainability, is a huge discussion around the world. Governments are talking about it, pressure groups are talking about it, lobbying groups and NGOs, non-governmental organisations, are talking about it. So we've got a real opening in the market to actually do something with this programme. ITF, I think, has worked very hard to ensure we've now got the Convention 188, so we've got something to pursue with countries' governance. We have IUF's transnational company campaign, which is making sure that we're looking at how do we consolidate good terms and conditions across different countries and different regions in some respects. And I think it's really important that we engage in this as much as we possibly can. So if you want any more information, please feel free to visit the ITF website. If you want information about the fishing side of the industry, it's the ITF Global Fisheries pages. If you want information about the Catcher to Counter programme, which is the programme that I'm leading, that's ITF Global Fish, and that also links you into IUF as well, so you can see the work that they're doing there. But anyway, I wasn't given much time, so I hope that this has been useful for you. Fabrizio will hopefully be able to answer any questions that you might have. I've got a copy of a presentation that I'm going to give to Evelyn, which will hopefully give you a little bit more information about the methods that we're using and some of the structures that we've built, and also identification of some of the leverage for any of you who are considering working with unions on these campaigns. And please feel free to contact me anytime for more information. So I'm going to finish there and wish you a successful course and look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care, bye bye.